Good evening, guys. Good afternoon, evening, whatever it may be for you, or good morning, maybe. Hope you're all doing well. Give me 2 seconds. I'm just gonna send out a few invites to people, and I'll be with you shortly. Do that one there, and then that one there. Cool. Good. Hey, Joe. Hope you're doing well, mate. Hope you're doing well. You know, Alice. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, hope everyone's good. Oh, dear. Sorry, it's going to be a bit of a slow start, this one. Hey, mate, Custodian, how you doing? Well, hope you're doing well anyway. Haven't seen you on here in a while. Huh. This stream's going to be a bit of a slow start. A bit rushed, just trying to get stuff sorted at the moment. Just trying to get something set up for the back, obviously for the relation to the episode. So, and some other things as well. I've been trying to get information from some of sources in regards to another topic, but that's been a bit of a nightmare because it's like trying to get blood out of a stone, really. But yeah. By the way, I thought I brought the helmet. Oh, wicked. Oh, nice. Okay, had a long night after I stopped someone. I think I was going to after I stopped someone, I think was going to carjack me yesterday until 4 a.m. and told a Polish chick in Canada. Oh, fair enough. A very eventful evening then. A very eventful evening. Fair enough, mate. I don't know what this thing is. Who? I don't know. Okay, weird. Sorry, there's a random chat thing I've been invited to, but I have no idea why I'm in it, really. Oh well. Oh, fair enough. So, this stream, I'm going to try and keep it. Famous last words. I'll say this at the beginning of every stream. Try and keep it shorter than the others. So, 2 hours maximum, roughly. So, till about 7:30ish, because I've got some stuff to do in this evening to try and sort some things out with something in regards to another thing. The stream itself is going to be around Operation Banner. I've covered the operation in context of equipment and that of certain periods in previous videos on the channel a while ago. It's been a little while since my last video on Operation Banner, which is the operation conducted by the British Army and British security forces and other security forces in general, really, in relation to the British government in Northern Ireland from 1969 till 2007. People think Operation Banner ended in 1997. 97? Yeah, with sort of the Good Friday Agreement and everything along that lines. However, it was 97, whatever. But the operation didn't end until 2007, so it was the longest single deployment, or longest deployment of British forces in any context ever, really. It's the longest operation ever conducted by the British Army. So, which is not surprising, really. Okay, one of those guys doesn't work. That's fine. So yeah, so it's 2007. It's crazy. People really don't think about it, but it honestly did. It was very common. Was Operation Banner your British attempt at stopping rebellion? In very simple terms and broad terms, kind of yes. So Operation Banner started in 1969 when basically the government in Northern Ireland was basically struggling to keep the peace between the two communities of putting it simply between Catholics and Protestants, or loyalists and Republican movements, etc., etc. Hi, John. Hope you're doing well. It was basically to try and keep peace. There was riots. It was basically on the brink of a civil war. Was what it was boiling up to be really in Northern Ireland at the time. That climaxed with major things like the Battle of the Bogside, etc., which were major riots and etc. happening in, say, Belfast, etc., and other places in like Londonderry and all those all over Northern Ireland, between the two communities, and mainly the two militant organizations within this community. Say the two sides of that situation, really. No worries, John. That's all right. That's all right. No worries. Hopefully, I might have. If I can get someone else on, maybe. If Simon's free, hopefully he might be able to jump on. If possible, we don't know, but we'll see. Let me just. Just a minute. So yeah, it's a very confusing period of history, really. Confusing, complicated, and very delicate, to say the least. So I'll try and keep away from the politics in general, but it was basically the government in Northern Ireland calling for support from the British government and so forth, the British Army, to come into Northern Ireland to help keep the peace between the two rival communities, factions, however you want to put it. The main two players in the paramilitaries, well, so I should say not the main two, but the main players in the paramilitaries were, say, the IRA, for example, who were the Irish Republican Army, who were obviously the Republican side of the argument. And then you also have like the Ulster Volunteer Force and other such paramilitaries on the other side, the loyalist side, so at least. But when the British Army came in, there was friction between the two sides and then the British Army. But for the first, say, year to a year and a half, so-called the honeymoon period, even though there were killings of British soldiers during that period, but it was known as the honeymoon period because it seemed to have solved the problem. After that, situation got worse, and the British Army became almost a piggy in the middle between the two rivaling factions, and then was either going one way or the other, trying to sort of sort out the individual circumstances between it. But apart from that, that's basically the very simple rundown of the Troubles. There's hundreds of years of history that go all into this in regards to why it was happening and all this sort of stuff, but it's very confusing and, again, very, very delicate. So again, I'll try and keep away from the politics in general regarding that. In relation to Operation Banner, I'll try and cover within this live stream that they were not locked for by the government in their way. Sent there by number 10 because the police were. Yeah. Sorry, thank you. John sort of put it better in the comments, really. Basically, the RUC, the Royal Ulster Constabulary, were finding it difficult to cope with what was happening in Northern Ireland at the time, so they called on support, basically. Yeah, basically, it was massively out of control, the situation. The RUC didn't have the manpower nor the sustainability, really, to be able to combat what was happening in Northern Ireland at the time. That's why they called for troops to be moved into Northern Ireland. John might be able to answer that better, but you had, say, the Ulster Defence Force, which were the regiment raised in Northern Ireland specifically, was probably at one point was the largest regiment in the British Army at one point, due to the amount of members it had, etc., and the amount of recruits, male and female. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff that even goes on there with like the killings that go on, etc., of like members of the UDF and the RUC being targeted when they're at home. Bear in mind, there's a lot of stuff that goes on regarding all like the RUC, but the RUC had both Catholic and Protestant, both Protestant and Catholic members of the police force. So it's a very confusing thing. Like there's two sides to every story, but there's a very much a massive grey area within regards to the Troubles and regards to Operation Banner and the whole situation within Northern Ireland. It's such a grey area. But yeah, I think John probably better placed to sort of answer a lot of the more in-depth questions regarding that, I think, on that side, and in regards to what we're talking about in general. But I want to keep this more along the lines of Operation Banner and its general doings, etc. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the police force in Northern Ireland are the only fully armed, i.e., each officer armed, police force in the UK. For that reason, they need to be. There's a massive threat there. When your possible outcome of you having to do a traffic stop on someone who is possibly a member of one of the paramilitaries, because they're, no matter what people say, they're still around. They still have plenty of arms and ammunition to do whatever they want to do. Just because Operation Banner's ended and the British Army, the British Army have ended operations in Northern Ireland, doesn't mean any of this is stopped. There's a reason why the police in Northern Ireland still drive around in armoured Land Rovers and armoured vehicles in general. I know, Joe, but the police in Northern Ireland are all armed, basically, and for good reason, really, because there's a legitimate threat there. But yeah, in regards to Operation Banner as a whole, there are separate, smaller operations, etc., within it. Like, for example, Motorman, which was 1972, if I remember correctly. Examples like that, where they were targeting certain weapons caches and also hiding spots, etc. Yeah, exactly, and that was a major worry and a major strain on the British Army at the Rhine as well at the time. They were worried because of their because of the operations, etc., that were happening in Northern Ireland. Would they be able to properly deal with anything that happened within regards to the Cold War in the wider world, in regard to the main threat at the time, really, for the West, i.e., the Russians, or the Warsaw Pact, I should say. Yeah, no. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Joe. But yeah, no, for the British Army of the Rhine, it was a major issue of manpower, really. Hi, Kenny, I hope you're doing well. It was a really major issue of trying to keep that, trying to keep the balance between when they had to get guys deployed in Northern Ireland and also with regards to requirements in Germany. And then also in regards to 1982, having all those troops again and any support go, especially all the Royal Navy support, go down to the South Atlantic to deal with that, as well as having to deal with what's happening in Northern Ireland around in the early 80s, which was kind of a high point for activity within Northern Ireland and within the province in general. And obviously John himself has got experience from the other side of the border, from the Irish Defence Force. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. And again, like in Scotland's kind of obviously not to the militant extent, to say the least, of say Northern Ireland, but there is that divide between the Catholic and Protestant communities within Scotland. Again, it's a much more wider gap, say Northern Ireland, but it's still visible. And it's one of those things which has always been an issue. Yeah, it's crazy how it all is, but it's one of those things, and I'm not gonna me trying to explain it in detail on here might make it worse. So I'm not going to step into that minefield. Anything to do with the minefield, I'm going to need Princess Di. So yeah, that's just one of those. But when Irish police charge you, do this. Oh, for God's sake. Yeah, exactly. All of them almost look exactly the same. Yeah. I'm just drinking orange juice. I'm not nothing major. Oh, if I poke the bear, I might end up with a call from a man with a very strange accent. And yeah, I'm not. I'm like, I know a bit about generally the general politics of the whole situation, but I'm not qualified to say the least on any of it. He says, "Stop! I will be." But yeah, I'm gonna try and talk about mainly the kit that I can, kind of thing, in sort of a brief overview of like is it flickering on the camera? Because that is really, really weird. That's really, really weird. It was like flickering. Oh, okay, that's really weird. Comment. Yeah, M1 carbines, you see Thompsons, Armalites, the occasional AK, and all sorts of like M1 Garans I've seen occasionally in like footage. All sorts of things, occasional FAL, SLRs that have been nicked in some way somehow. All sorts of weapons, you name it. Like if it was made during that period, during the period of the Troubles, it was probably used in Northern Ireland, because they were getting weapons from all sorts of places. There were benefactors in the States that were supplying arms. There were benefactors in North Africa who were supplying arms. Other paramilitaries around the world who were supplying arms. And other like revolutionary movements where somehow their event ended up in Northern Ireland or in Southern Ireland, being moved over the border at some point. Say the Republic of Ireland, I should say, and being moved over the border at some point. So yeah, it's very, very sort of thing. But in regards to the 2 months of Troubles, I don't blame you. Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely, Yanis. Yeah, it's one of those. It's a crazy point of history. It really, really is. But very, very interesting, and it shouldn't be forgotten. Like, it really, really shouldn't be forgotten because it is a part of a lot of our history, and still the effects are felt today. Excuse me. It's getting over a cold, so I've got a bit of a cough at the moment, more so than usual. But yeah, in regards to how the British Army looks when it goes into Northern Ireland, I think you've probably seen pictures of like thumbnails and that of what I've put up before. It goes in how it has sort of basically acted, say during anti-right duties in Cyprus and in Aden. British Army goes in with steel helmets, some with flax, some without. Flak jackets, I mean, some with it, some without. Rifles ready, bayonets fixed for anti-right duties, basically. And from then it just evolves into more deliberate, smaller unit patrols on a general day-to-day business, and then when the riot comes out, it's much more proper riot or anti-riot and public order duty kind of deals in regards to the kit and equipment which is being used, and it all progresses gradually. Like the British Army are using like small aluminium or aluminium alloy shields, either these type of ones or one or two of the ones they use in Cyprus, which are basically just like all mesh almost pop up, but there's like very few of them, and it's all very basic. The Royal Ulster Constabulary using them as well, those ones as well, and it then develops into larger shields made out of perspex, made out of other materials like that, which are much easier to produce, less likely to, like it's tricky because there's a whole development of things, whole development from just retrofitting like current existing equipment to use for riot control. The military mark gear. Yeah, no, it is like you've got like, for example, you've got the standard Mark IV helmet, which then just gets reconfigured with a riot visor, which is a good stopgap, but it's not very effective in that sort of sense of it's very front heavy. It tends to just do that constantly on your head, and it's only really a stopgap measure. And then another stopgap gets bringing as well, like with the Cromwell helmet, which is basically a motorcycle helmet, which has been fitted with, again, a riot visor. Until you get, it's not until the Mark VI is introduced, the Mark VI ballistic nylon helmet is introduced with properly designed and built on properly into the design anti-riot visors, which are specifically designed for it, not just like something retrofitted by an armorer or whatever it be. Yeah, exactly. Either with the RUC early helmets are basically motorcycle helmets or something to that nature, or the Cromwells that are brought on later. It's very much a slapdash bodge job of a thing really throughout the year, especially the 70s through to the early 80s. It's very much of finding what works and what doesn't. If in that's regards to the gear. So basically, the British Army going into Northern Ireland, some with, some without flak jackets. Most of which of the early ones are all American, ex stocks and ex surplus from the Vietnam War. Bear in mind, 1969, the Vietnam War is at its height when the British Army goes in. So any ex stocks like this one, for example, is an American one, like full stop. Still with the American Army tape on the this side, but like that's an M56, M52A, sorry, M52A, and you see them a lot, and then you see the M69s, and then you see the British development and of their own flags, i.e., mainly just the inners of the American ones, just with new British-made covers on. And then so on and so forth. And then you don't get a proper, actually British standard-made design, inner and outer, until, so the Aniba vest of the mid to late 80s, really. Up until then, they've been using basically modified American stocks, really up until then. And as I said, like with all the riot gear, with everything like lines, with the modified vehicles, Land Rovers being added with like caging, etc., to stop, say, stuff smashing on it, and other adaptations introducing such vehicles like the Humber Pig into this sort of situation. They have been used earlier, but into this sort of situation, it just adds another element of what was being used at the time, and using old fire engines, building them up to be more protective for those guys using it, etc., and using, say, water cannons, etc., as an anti-riot and crowd control method, really. They brought a lot of the British Army colonial tactics in Northern Ireland. Yeah, basically what they had learnt from crowd control and public order duties in Cyprus and in Aden, they tried to then adapt to Northern Ireland without great effects. And again, how the British Army went into Northern Ireland in 1969 and how they found it in 1969 is very different to how it was in 1972, for example. Extremely different. It's completely in a parallel universe. The British Army coming in by the majority, not all, but by the majority, was seen as coming in to help and keep the peace. By 1972, that idea, especially within one side of that community, had completely changed, and it become very militant and very standoffish with that idea. So again, the ideas had to change. It was one thing, like in 1969, having general conversations from one end of the street to another about where a peace barrier or basically just a blockade is going to go down a road to keep the peace between one side and the other, to literally having to stop the other side killing the other within a few months. That was happening already with the use of like tear gas, etc., against one side against the other, whatever it may be. But it adapted to more and more, and it became more violent, especially through the 1970s. And then the violence is peaking in the early to mid 1980s, and then starts to then gradually fizzle out again. I say it like there wasn't violence, but there was obviously in the late 80s. And then obviously there's these ebbs and flows of the violence and extremism that's going on within the entirety of the operation throughout the whole of it. High points, low points, you name it, it's there. Yeah, so and British soldiers were under basically the color card rule of the yellow. I think was it the yellow card? Basically, terms of engagement kind of thing of when to fire, not to fire, etc., etc. They were bound by that, as they were in I think Aden as well, as far as I remember. But it very much came to a point and a height during the operations in Northern Ireland. Because you were dealing with a public, you were dealing with a civilian population. You weren't dealing with a military population. You were dealing with a civilian population with a paramilitary within those communities. So it was very different. You didn't know who was a terrorist. You didn't know who was whatever. Here we go. Hello. How are we doing? Oh, are we on? Okay. Wait until that whoever that is speaks. I'm guessing Danny, maybe. I'm not too sure. We'll see though. We'll see. How you doing, Zach? Hope you're well. Things. Man, I'm not up to past a thin is overdid. Excuse me. Please keep what's up that. Peacekeeping, what's that? Yeah. Wolfgang himself is a legend. but yeah, the whole of the situation is very, very confusing. See what happens there soon. The US, whenever they go anywhere. Yeah. But yeah, no, the whole situation is very confusing, really. But yeah, the development of equipment through that whole period again is just it's constantly changing all the time. From the radios being used using literal radios that the police are using for military use, etc., and vice versa. It's very complicated with that whole situation. yeah, but yeah, it's confusing. So, as references for well, for myself, really, just to remind myself about certain things. 2 books I'm using for this. Hopefully, I'll get to use these during this live stream again. Just me, I again, because I've been rushing with other stuff, I haven't really had time to use these properly to get some references to use on this thing. But hopefully, if anyone asks a question, hopefully this could be a good use for that. So we got Operation Banner. So the British Army in Northern Ireland, 1969 to 2007, by Nick Van Der. So that. And then we've also got Imperial War Museum Book of Modern Warfare. I do have another Northern Ireland book somewhere, which is I think I've got one which is They Brought the Kids Inside, or something along those lines, and then Bullets, Bombs, and Bacon Banjos. I think that is, which is a really, really good book. Actually, it's basically from the perspective of the blokes on the ground. And as I said earlier on, in regards to the techniques and the training and the general actions of British soldiers within Northern Ireland changes so dramatically within the space of a few years, from literally large groups of, say, platoon to company strength, basically dealing with something in one area at a time with bayonets fixed, etc., basically guarding areas which are being dealt with by the emergency services like the fire brigade, for example, fires, etc., and other public orders things, to day-to-day patrols. Well, that's for the main thing, but to day-to-day patrols with 4 to 5 guys called a brick, mainly 4, called a brick, doing their hour to 2 hour patrols, or longer or shorter, whatever it may be, depending on the area you're working in. Going around, gathering information, taking photographs of people who may be interesting to further interesting to further investigate later on if they match a certain description or match photographs of someone you've got interest in already. And also just to basically show yourselves and keep the peace in that sort of sense as well, and show the local area that you're there, you're not leaving, you are there to deal with the situation. It would have been international incident if a Texan shot down. I remember seeing fire engine being used by the military. Yeah, they use fire engine multiple times, generally for the hoses, to basically break up a crowd. I knew some dudes from Belfast in my old life before I reformed. They used to blow up things. Lights broke out in Boys 2020. Everyone showed up to keep things. Yeah. So hopefully I can think. So I'll try and quite a good one. This book's actually quite good. So it starts off. So I'm just going over sort of the contents in general. It gives a background to Irish nationalism as a sort of the first sort of chapter, the first part of the book anyway. The first sort of 16 pages or so, just because then it gives you an outline of why this was sort of happening at the time and who were the main agitators on one side of it. I won't say, like, I will foremost say this: there are atrocities on both sides of this whole issue. The British Army is responsible for some things that went wrong. Sorry, I'll try and rephrase that. British Army is responsible for bad things during operations there, obviously, but the atrocities example and the terrorism is responsible for both sides of the argument, either the IRA or the loyalist paramilitaries like the UVF. Absolutely, each one of, say, the paramilitaries is a terrorist organization in my eyes. Doesn't matter if you're loyalist or Republican, whatever, both at fault. And the communities that are actually on the ground having to deal with this day to day are the ones caught in the middle, and the ones who are suffering. Doesn't matter who it is. What was the movie of British Shoulders? So that was 71, Alice. That was the film 71. It's sort of loosely based on reality, on sort of a true story that happened. and the regiment depicted in the movie itself is a fake one to sort of cover up. I think the actual guy it's sort of based on was actually from the Parachute Regiment, as far as I'm aware. Contact by it. It's a great film. It shows. Yeah. Contact is good. In the Name of the Father is quite good, I would say as well. Daniel Day-Lewis is a brilliant actor, I will say. There's some sort of TV movies like Bloody Sunday and then Sunday. They're quite good. Obviously, you could probably tell what they're roughly referencing to. And then, yeah, there's quite a few actually, but some of them are better than others. But some of them tend to be more. Smithers, I was replying. Quickly. Where was I? Hey.
Hello.
Howdy. You all right?
I have you for. I can come on for a few minutes because my little one is up to the doctor. She's not feeling well. But...
Yeah, no worries, mate. No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
So, how are you anyway?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. I'm very good. Yourself?
Good. So, banner. Where do we start?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Banner / Northern Ireland Troubles. For those of you that want to call it that way, it's up to you.
The Great Northern Kerfuffle.
Yes. Yeah, it's an interesting one in lots and lots of ways, but it's also it's a very, very tricky one to try and talk about as well at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you'll have to answer the questions there now because I can't see any questions. So if people ask me questions, let me know.
Just some of the movies relating to Rock Banner in that, and some saying they watch Rebellion. Oh yeah, that's it's okay. The TV. I don't think you've watched Rebellion. It's the one about the 16 Easter Rising.
I don't think I have.
It's okay. It's okay.
Or you see, but even in Irish history, people go, 1916, that was the War of Independence. No, it wasn't. The War of Independence didn't kick off really until 1919, 1920, 1921. Yes, there was the revolution, the uprising in 1916. But you have to remember, Ireland was granted home rule in 1913.
Yeah.
Right? We were going to have our own parliament, our own government, like Wales and Scotland. And for one way or another, these little people with little spiky helmets in Europe decided they were going to invade Belgium. And at that stage, you had unionists, loyalists, whatever you want to call them, saying they were anti-home rule because in Ireland at the time, the vast majority of the power that was held in Ireland was by the Protestant community, right?
Yeah.
And they were very, very scared in the north because that was where the main Protestant community was at the time in Ireland, that they were going to lose their power. So they formed the Ulster Volunteer Force, which, for those of you that don't know, was formed to go to war against England to stop home rule, right? And then the Irish down south formed the Irish Volunteers, that was backed by the British, because they were there to fight the Unionists in the north for home rule.
Yeah.
So you had the start of a civil war going back to 1913. Then when the First World War broke out, Lloyd George basically went, crap, I need bodies to send to France. I have two pre-med armies already in the north, or already in Ireland. So what do I do? So he literally went to the Irish Volunteers and said, look, if you go fight in the north, or if you go fight in France, I'll guarantee you home rule when you come back. And he did the exact same thing to the Protestant community, or the Unionist community, and they went and fought in France. The Unionists, with Catholics in it, formed the 36th Ulster Division, and the Irish Volunteers from the south formed the 16th Irish Division, right? And they fought side by side the whole way through the war. And it wasn't until these guys came back in 1918, 1919, 1920, where they went, well, why have we have to been for the last 4 years in France fighting for when you've said that nothing, we're getting nothing that you promised us?
Yeah,
Then
yeah,
that's when the War of Independence really kicked off. Like,
yeah, yeah,
plus the British didn't try the they tried the lead. They did the military tribunal and executed the leaders of 1916. Now, the Irish are a bit like the Scottish and the Welsh, as in like, yeah, we like that's wrong. Don't do that. And then when you execute our own, it's like, well, fuck you. Don't be doing that. You know. So yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. The executions were, yeah. Martyrdom speeds up something to no
Exactly.
end.
But like when the lads were brought out of the GPOs in 1916 after their week little rebellion, after the week long rebellion, they were stoned and had vegetables and all thrown at them because they were after taking over a post office where mothers, fathers, and wives of the fellas fighting in France couldn't get money because these little upstarts are after taking over the post office. How am I supposed to get my pension?
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
And then, like the British Army in Banner, when they first went in Banner, like after when the partition of the country happened in 1922, they formed in the north. The government was formed around a political idea called gerrymandering, which basically is apartheid. Like if you were a Catholic, you like if you owned a property, you had a vote. So if you were a rich landlord or a rich person with 6 or 7 houses, you had 6 or 7 votes. Whereas the Irish guys, they couldn't afford or shall we say the Catholic guys, Irish guys, whatever you want to call them, who didn't have the vote. Who didn't have the vote. It was basically like you know, we can't vote, but you can vote. You can have 6 or 7 votes. Like gerrymandering in itself is really complicated. And then you had the burning of Bombay Street, where it was a Protestant mob burnt out a Catholic area. Then you had the formation of the Civil Rights Movement, which was literally, it was the same civil rights movement as that was there in the States. Just we want to vote, and it was completely mismanaged by the government in the north because they didn't want to lose power. Then all of a sudden, the police force was literally on its knees, so they had to call in the British Army, and the British Army was actually loved by the Catholics for a good year, roughly. Before the conflict really kicked off. And what happened with the conflict being kicked off was Number 10 Downing Street took, rather than them giving the army their orders and telling them what to do, they handed over the army to a corrupt, shall we say, because it has been proven, this is a fact, that it was a corrupt government at the time. So now you're after giving them a perfect tool to oppress people that you wanted to oppress, that you always wanted to oppress. And then it just got messy from there on. Now, don't get me wrong. The Irish government did things that were absolutely wrong. The IRA did things that were absolutely wrong. The UFF did things that were wrong. The UVA, the UDA, everyone with an initial. It was there was so much crap that went on up there. It was ridiculous. Like.
And that's why I just like I'm glad you came on to explain it, because it's a minefield in itself.
But like interest like oh, it was the IRA. The first British soldier that was killed in the north was killed by a unionist. The last policeman to be killed in the north was killed by a unionist who was a Catholic.
You
know?
It's not black and white. It's so nuanced. That's the problem. And
it's see-through.
Yeah, exactly. You can't tell what's what, basically. It explains exactly like the guys on the ground who are walking the streets, like they don't know who's who. They don't know who's friend or foe. That's the whole problem. That is the whole problem. That sums up the whole of the Northern Ireland in itself. Is no one knew what the fuck was going on.
Yeah, but I mean, like,
Really?
from my time on the border, it was like literally, okay, Monday, what are we doing? Well, we're setting up checkpoints. Why are we setting up checkpoints? We don't know. Okay, fair enough. Like,
Yeah.
what are we looking for that we're setting up checkpoints? It doesn't matter. We're just setting up checkpoints. Okay, fair enough. Like Tuesday, what are we doing? Oh, we're raiding a person's house. What are we looking for? We don't know. Do you know? So, like,
If they got biscuits or something, I don't know.
oh yeah, but like, but there was so much stuff that went on apart from the troubles. Like the smuggling that used to go on up there was ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like because obviously when you have a land border like that, you have certain stuff is cheaper at one side of the border than the other. On our side, it was whiskey, and there was lads smuggling whiskey over the border into the north.
Yeah.
And on the north side, it was diesel and petrol, and they were smuggling it back the other way.
Yeah.
Do you know? So it was just an absolute mess of everything.
Absolutely. Decent conflicts, everyone. Yeah, no, you're right, Alice. Yeah, like, yeah, no one came up with clean hands. Every single organization or major person that was involved with it, it's some way involved in a good or bad way. It's
yeah,
it's it's tricking itself. Oh well, let's get to talk about Kit anyway.
Okay. What would you like to talk about, Kit?
Oh, so anything really. Like, and that's what I sort of touched on, sort of the brief, how everything has sort of evolved from literally it being, especially through the start of it, through the 70s into the early 80s, being basically a hodgepodge and just like make do and mend kind of attitude, really, until it doesn't really get until the mid to late 80s where you have almost purpose built personal gear, for example. Really?
Okay, so just break it down. Start at the start. Okay, so when the British Army first went into Northern Ireland, including the police force, they didn't have gas masks. They didn't have specific built riot gear. The riot gear that they initially used in the north was taken from Cyprus.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Cyprus, or in regards to ballistic protection, flak jackets from the US.
From the US, yeah. Like they literally begged, borrowed, and stole everything that they could get their hands on.
Exactly.
At one stage, I put a comment up earlier on. At one stage, the RUC were using a motorbike helmet that they had converted into a riot helmet, whereas they literally jerry-rigged a riot shield onto the front of it. And the British Army did the same with the Cromwell helmets. The Cromwell helmet was originally a motorbike helmet that they jerry-rigged. Like you can literally track the troubles in the north by the progression of the kit.
Exactly.
From when they went in again, forgive my memory, 62? No,
69.
69, sorry. From when they went in 69 until about 72, they were in plain green gear.
Yeah.
Then after that, they went into 68 pattern. Now you can see 68 pattern being used right up until the ceasefire, because soldiers are ingenious, and in the fact that I'm not going to wreck my good gear when I'm running around the field, chasing provos or chasing whoever over barbed wire fences. So you'll see that being used right up. 84, obviously, you see the 84 pattern stuff being used. 95, then you see the 95 pattern stuff being used.
Yeah.
In relation to body armor, you had the American stuff, the M53A first of all.
Yes,
then
you got the M52As, you got M52s, M69s, with like the collars, etc. And with and without.
The only ones then that they purposely built was the improved Northern Ireland body armor, and you very rarely see pictures of that stuff because lads actually wore them under their jackets.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then you see the later stuff being used after that.
Exactly. Yeah. It's as I was saying. Yeah, you can basically date general photographs of like when in the period of Operation Banner is. Which is it's helpful for us.
Yeah, like British Army and RUC pictures are obviously easier to verify timeline because you see the equipment they're using. Like somebody put up a question here about a paramilitary. There was an IRA man holding an M16A1. that could have been anyone. He could have been a
Yeah.
Red Hand Commando. He could have been UVF. He could have been IRA. He could have been INLA. Like
that could have been 1971 or 2001. It could have.
exactly. It is extremely hard to date those pictures unless they're standing beside a car with a number plate on it, which they wouldn't be that stupid enough to do anyway. You know?
Exactly. It's
Hang on a second. I'll be back in 2 minutes.
Yeah, no worries, mate. No worries. But yeah, no, it's the progression of kit is extraordinary. Like how kit was changing constantly through that whole period is crazy, guys. But yeah.
So what questions are coming in there? Because I can't see bugger all.
We just got I bet they smuggled a lot of arms too. Yeah, plenty of stuff was smuggled over the border, like all sorts of stuff. As John was saying, whiskey, petrol, Armalites, you name it. Anything was going over the border or coming through secret shipments or whatever in ports, even in the south or the north, you name it. It came in from everywhere. Like stuff was always moving one way or another. An
awful lot of stuff, believe it or not, actually came through the UK because they get it to the UK where there wasn't as much checks. Well, like if stuff was being directly smuggled into Ireland, you had obviously had the Irish security forces down south and you had the British security forces up the north. So they were looking for smugglers' runs. They were looking for stuff being dropped in coves and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So a lot of it actually was shipped to the UK and then smuggled in from the UK because the checks were less coming the other. I would say in like you think your ports in the UK are secure.
Yeah.
So that's what was actually happening.
Yeah. Yeah, that explains a lot as well. Yeah, exactly. Because anything coming from mainland UK into Northern Ireland is not going to be under as much scrutiny as say something coming from North Africa into Northern Ireland, for example.
Oh, but that's exactly it. And like you're concentrating on the border areas, so like all your security is literally entrenched defenses because they're in OPs or they're on checkpoints and stuff along the border.
Exactly.
Where stuff coming in the opposite direction, it's sort of easy to get in.
Yeah.
And they had the proof to do that, like.
Exactly. A friend of mine, Paddy Bob, online was telling me stories one day on a Discord when I showed them retro. Oh, okay, cool. Watched the film of the Armour IRA squad, and I couldn't help laughing at the guy with the RPG. Was like Rodney from Only Fools. Okay.
Well, I can tell you one thing about the Armagh Brigade. The British security forces call that Bandit Country for a reason. Because right up until the ceasefire, they barely control that area. Like, like there was certain things happened, whereas they actually had, I can't remember the name of the truck, but they had a truck. The security forces had a nickname on it. They had a flamethrower, .5 machine guns, 60 M60 machine guns bolted to the back of this thing, and would drive up that checkpoint and spray the checkpoint, and then just drive away.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. Dave Brennan's in the chat. Hi, I hope you're doing well, mate. Kenny, hi, mate. How you doing well? You can't see the chat at all, or you're on your phone, or you're on your laptop.
I'm on my phone.
Oh, that's probably why then. Oh, fair enough. Oh, that's fair. But no, it's like the whole. It's different. That's why I sort of like with the politics and the whole situation around it in general is quite confusing. But in regards to the kit and etc., obviously we've touched on a bit. In regards to other operations within Banner as a whole, obviously you have things like Motormen, which were 1972, roughly. I think 72. Let me just see if I can just double check that is. Have you got this one, by the way?
Oh, it's probably up there somewhere in my book collection. A very, very good one to get if you can find them.
I've got a couple of good ones, but they're with the other bunch of which are in a box.
There's the British Army in Ulster Volume 1 and the British Army in Ulster Volume 2.
Yeah, they're good ones. I've got those copies somewhere. because I've got
Um,
there's some books in a massive box in a lockup, in my mum's lockup.
Yeah, but these actually go into the kit that was used. Like you have
Yeah.
Browning, the SLR, GPMG, Sterling. Haha. If I ever win the lotto, I want one of them.
Oh, you want a pig?
I want a Saracen. Yeah.
Oh, Saracen. Oh, okay. No, a Saracen would be nice. I would like a
Yeah.
Saracen. But this book's actually quite good because it covers, because it starts off with, in the first chapter, basically going over like the Irish nationalism part of it and everything, and then goes into the individual parts of like military aid and civil power, Republican insurgency, the provisional offensive during 1772, and goes into the suffering of the border, goes into the armed forces in the mid-70s, goes into the IRA campaign in Europe, on the mainland of Europe as well.
Yeah, they had a few. They had a few campaigns. They didn't. They blew up Blackpool as well at one stage, didn't they? Or was it Blackpool?
Yeah. So was it? I think it was. Might have been at Brighton.
Brighton. Sorry, Brighton.
During the Conservative Conference in 1983.
They tried to take Maggie out of it.
Yeah, basically, yeah, and I think they got the wrong. I think they tried to hit the floor below. I think it was, or the room below, off to the side, or whatever it was.
Yeah,
and she survived, and that, but a couple of people were killed. But then she went on to do her conference, and then it almost helped her campaign, really. Well, I say almost, it did help her campaign, really, for 1984. So.
There was the operation. There was the operation where they took out Mountbatten.
Yeah, that was.
That was.
That's 78.
I was going to go 77, actually.
Might have been. I'll have to double check that, but I'm trying to remember. Yeah, 78 or 77, one of those. But yeah, they took out Mountbatten. But then you have also like the counter operations that, like, for example, the SAS operations in, say, like Gibraltar, taking out the RA.
Which is a very, 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 very grey.
Yeah.
Almost white.
Yeah.
I think that's still been investigated.
I wouldn't be surprised. Long judicial inquiries.
Yeah.
No, this one's actually quite good. I'll try and maybe, if anyone's got any other questions, try and reference it. I know they were proper tough, but I couldn't help. Oh, okay. Just general chat, I think, just having in the commentary at the moment. Anything you want to add, John? Really?
No. I just better take off there soon because I have to go collect the kids. But kit wise, like the thing with kit wise, if you're into reenacting or living historian or whatever, both like to do Op Banner, right? To do Op Banner well and get away with Op Banner, right?
Yeah.
You could literally get a 68 pattern jacket, a pair of lightweight, a pair of ammo boots with putties, or DMS boots with putties, right? And a 58 belt with a water bottle pouch and one ammunition pouch, and you can do the whole of the troubles in that kit.
Yeah, basically.
Except for the green stuff at the start, like.
Basically, yeah.
Like you can. All you'd have to do is change your rifle. You go from an SLR to an SA80. You go from a Mark IV helmet to a Mark VI helmet, and that's it. So
but then even then, with the general thing, you could probably just wear a beret throughout that whole period, and it wouldn't even.
Well, they didn't wear berets. They wore berets at the start. The paras especially wore their berets. They wanted to be known. They wanted to be known that were on the streets.
Yeah, I think it depends. It depends. Say if you're on your general day-to-day, like in your brick, compared to say when you're in anti-riot duties. But like, so in your day-to-day in your brick, you're generally wearing your beret as a general thing. Sometimes guys will be wearing their helmets, especially in the late 80s. Guys would be going on those patrols with their helmets on, sometimes with the visors attached, and it's a bit. There's always those nuances. There's always those exceptions and all that sort of stuff.
But like
early on all the way through.
An interesting one. Here's my Mark 6. Look.
Yeah.
There we go. Right, that's an early Mark 6, right?
Yeah.
The shiny one, right?
Yeah.
You can actually see, if you look at photos and you see them not wearing the Mark 6 helmets, or the Mark 6 helmet covers, right? The reason for that was because the first ones that were made from polyester. They weren't cotton, right?
Yeah.
So if the boys got petrol bombed, it would melt down the back of their necks.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's why they didn't wear their helmet covers. So that's another way to time. If you're looking at a photo, if you see them not wearing the helmet covers, the initial Mark 6 helmet covers were made of basically plastic, so they wouldn't put them on their helmets.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other thing as well that I was going to say is this one, which is like hen's teeth. Best look trying to find one of them, an original one of them. The Para Riot helmets, they were all in country made, right?
Yeah.
And they did not make them until after Bloody Sunday.
Yeah, yeah.
So whenever you see them wearing these Riot helmets, sorry, I got the timeline wrong there. Whenever you see them being worn, it was after a thing called the Battle of the Bogside. Whereas when they started making covers on their helmets.
Yeah. Oh, fair. But yeah, and like the same with, say, that as well. Like, you see that sort of. You won't see really any of these really until very, very late 69, 70. Anything really before that is just the helmet itself.
Just the standard helmet, yeah.
Yeah, up until, say, 75, 76, when you see that transitional period of then Cromwell starting to be introduced, and you see that them together, and then eventually these all begin to phase out, and then it's a constant in out phase constantly. It's always that.
But there was specific helmets made for the north, but they couldn't make them in the quantities. They couldn't make them in the quantities that they needed them, and plus, they were an in-theatre issue only. So, like, lads would come do their 4-month tour, be issued a helmet, go back, and they just weren't able for the wear and tear of being handed over to them.
You might see one company of a battalion that's been deployed to Northern Ireland maybe using it for a 3-month emergency tour, and then that's it. You don't see it again because it's been worn to buggery and it's been used heavily. So, and that's the thing of things like stuff changes so much because of the rotation of and how deployments work within Northern Ireland. Kit is so different between sometimes unit to unit. It's crazy.
Oh yeah.
Even in the same week of the same month of the same year, especially in the early part in 1969, units can be completely different.
Yeah, like you can actually tell a specific Scottish regiment called the Argyll Southern Highlanders, right?
Yeah.
You can actually tell one of their companies. They used to get gaiters, World War II gaiters. 38 pattern gaiters or 44 pattern gaiters, whatever the hell, right? And they would blacken them, and they'd wear them with their.
Joe, Bloody Sunday was 1972. Sorry, carry on, mate. Yeah,
and they'd wear them with their DMS boots. So when you actually look at photos of those guys, even if they're wearing helmets, even if they're not wearing any insignia or anything like that, you can tell that they're A Company Southern Argyll Highlanders because of that gaiter. You know?
Exactly. It's those little bits which are really, really quite fascinating, and they sort of help you try and paint a picture of what you're looking at as well. But like, as I said, with like early Northern Ireland, you've got pictures of guys with Mark IVs on, flak vests on, bayonets fixed in sort of like parade order, almost anti-riot duties, but in literally in
a box respirator on their chest.
Yeah. Or just like one of the lightweights, or a mixture of all three. Like from you got box respirators, you got the lightweight respirators. Sometimes you have the first issue S6 respirator bags for the 58 pattern wearing, all of a mixture. You have that, and then literally another part of the city, you've got guys basically just wearing simple belt kit and their jumper and no flak vest, and it's like it's such a weird contrast and such a weird thing on each side.
Like certain, how do I put this properly and politically correctly? Certain regiments could operate in certain areas.
Yeah.
Without getting too much trouble.
Right? Exactly. Yeah.
Scottish regiments. Well, most Scottish regiments, bar two, Black Watch and the Argyll, right? They weren't liked in a lot of Catholic areas because they came from Glasgow areas and stuff like that. There was sectarianism again in those, right? Other regiments could get away in certain aspects that, like Paras, if the Paras walked into somewhere because of certain things that happened in the past, they would inflame the situation. Whereas if you sent in the likes of Queen Mary's Volunteer Rifles or whoever, right?
Yeah.
You know, they wouldn't inflame the situation as much as other regiments could and did. You know?
Yeah. Exactly. No, I completely agree because especially when you bring up something like the Paras, it is a that's all I'm going to say. No, it's such a confusing situation.
Yeah. Saying that not all Paras were bad. Not all the Argylls and the Black Watch were bad.
Exactly. I think, and again, especially with like the Argylls, they picked up a reputation, especially what had happened in Aden. They picked up a reputation as well. So it's not necessarily like history from Northern Ireland itself, but it could be from anywhere in the past, anywhere from like the past 20 or so years, from wherever they're deployed, can bring up a reputation like the Argylls or whatever it may be.
And you have to remember, you have to remember too, at that time frame, the British Army still had an awful lot of Irish regiments. They had the Enniskillen Dragoons, the Enniskillen Fusiliers, the Royal Irish Rangers, the UDR, the Irish Guards, the Queen's Royal Irish Hussars, South Irish or North Irish Horse. There's actually a bloody Irish artillery company in Liverpool, for God's sake. I mean, like there was like they were everywhere, you know.
Yeah, exactly. No, you're right, David. Yeah, anything connected to Ireland, it generally is complicated. Yeah.
Very. Yeah.
Oh dear. Copy that. I have to remember. A guy from 2 Para patrolled with his own Thompson. Forget his name. Okay. It's from Kenny. Do you know what I said?
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. Did they use any A1 rifles or were the carbines an A2 prison? What for any of the paramilitaries?
They used everything and anything they could get their hands on.
Exactly. Like you see M16A1s being used by British forces, depending on the type of patrol they're on.
The main weapons you see being used by the security forces, the RUC used Mark IVs earlier on. The B Specials used them, the Mark IV rifle, the Enfield Mark IV, the SLR, Mini 14.
That's it, Mini 14. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
M1 carbine, Sterlings, and then later on you see them when they actually started getting specific equipment, MP5s and Glocks, and they had a Ruger pistol, their first pistol.
Didn't they get some issue though, sort of like the HKs at 5556 as well?
Yes, G3s.
G3s, and then there's that other sort of like weird MP5. Sort of like larger. Yeah,
the SAS actually stopped using G3s in the north because of a contact they had with an IRA unit. And what happened was the IRA lads had G3s, the SAS lads had G3s. No one knew who was shooting, and no one knew who would stop shooting. So after that engagement in the ops report, the SAS said we're going to stop using G3s.
Yeah.
You actually see men carrying SLRs as well at one stage.
Yeah.
You also see the GPMGs being carried on patrols by the British Army. But the main variety of weapons being carried is by the RUC. The British Army, it was SLRs, SA-80s, GPMGs, or Bren guns, and the M16 and Armalites, M16 Armalites, were carried by Royal Marine Commandos, their Mountain Arctic group, or mountain leader cadre.
Yeah, mountain warfare. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
something to do with hills in snow.
Yeah. They carried them, and later on, then in the conflict, you see an awful lot of NCOs carrying M16s when they're outside in the country, because they just wanted that rapid firepower.
Yeah.
And then standard pistols then was BAPs.
Yeah.
Sorry, what we call BAPs, you call them high powers, Browning automatic pistols.
Yeah. And then when you get into like anything used by any of the paramilitaries, it's literally anything that was really around at the time. Really?
Oh yeah.
Anything.
Martin McGuinness. It's now, don't jump down Jake's throat or my throat. This is fact. It has been stated. Martin McGuinness was in the IRA, right? And he was noted to carry a Thompson.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. The man himself, he's on record. He carried a Thompson machine gun.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's yeah. And I said, yeah, anything really around at the time, from M1 Garands to Thompsons to grease guns to
AKs with folding stocks was their favorite ones, because unfortunately they would be able to hide them under jackets and stuff if they were doing assassinations and things like that. Like.
Or put them like in a glove box or whatever of like a
but in certain areas in Belfast and in Derry / Londonderry, whatever your preference is, they would actually have them in bins, right? And the guy, they were known as drop boxes, right? So they'd have them in bins with jackets and stuff in them. So whoever, now it was both sides did this. It wasn't just IRA. It was the unionist paramilitaries did this as well. So they'd walk past the bin, right? They'd open the lid. They'd take off their jacket, put on a different color jacket, draw a rifle or draw a pistol or whatever, do the job, walk casually down the road or whatever, get to the next drop box, open the bin, open the lid of the bin, drop in the pistol, take out a different pistol, change their jackets, and take off. So they had completely changed their identity. Like we're looking for somebody in a green or in a blue denim jacket and blue jeans. Yeah. Whereas like 2 blocks down the road, your man is wearing
that might have used a 9mm in whatever shooting they've done, and then is now a 45, for example. Like, exactly.
Yeah. So like 2 blocks down the road now, he's wearing a donkey jacket or a bomber jacket, and it's completely different color. You know?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Joe just said, so given you guys are well veered in this stuff, what side had a legitimate reason, or did any of them? Yeah. I'm going to keep away from that question.
I'm not even going to answer that question.
It's a legitimate question, but I'm not going to give a legitimate answer because I will.
Because you could walk yourself into too much trouble. Let's put it this way.
I might end up with a phone call at the end of this live stream.
Yeah, let's put it this way. They all had legitimate reasons. They all had their own agenda, and they were in everyone's context, in everyone else's context. Hello, say hello. In everyone else's context, in everyone else's context, they were right. Do you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But we do not condone violence on any level.
No.
No matter who does it.
Yeah, exactly. What sheep?
Joe, you might want to poke the bear, but I do bloody not. I've got a child to look after. Interesting trait.
Some fella knocking at your door. I wouldn't carry on if I were you.
Exactly. Can he just put there? Depends on what side of the fence you sit on. One man's terrorist, another man's fruit and fire. Absolutely.
Well, that's exactly it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
My
Being
hammer and my hammer and your knees have a date.
Your face and a curb have a certain appointment. Joe just put, you should be in politics, John. Great answer. Politics not a play. Yeah, I've got you. Yeah, no, it's as I said, the analogy I've put on it is a minefield, and it's a minefield probably only Princess Diana could probably clear. But
I don't even think poor old Diana could have cleared it, because you're going to run into the people then going, she was taken out by the royal family.
They cut the brake cables.
Yeah, exactly.
No, she's like all the other people who've gone missing. She's probably in Argentina.
Yeah. Or Chile or someplace.
Yeah, some other round place like that. But no, it's the whole thing regarding the Troubles, Operation Banner, or whatever you want to call it. It's like a lot of things around that sort of period, or actually, well, just around like human nature in general. Like, like people can argue for days of like, was, say, for example, the sinking of the Belgrano legitimate? That's one thing, and then it's
yeah. Unless you're there on the day making the decision. Now, okay.
Yeah.
Look, I know there's a case after coming out there not so long ago about a soldier being tried for something he did 20 years time or 10 years time ago, or 20 years ago or 30 years ago, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Every soldier, when you go into a combat zone like that or into an initial engagement zone like that, you have to be bound by civilian law, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And no matter what you argue, no matter what you say, if there is a question there about your actions that you carried out, you can guarantee you that it could come back to haunt you no matter what. It'll be investigated.
Yeah.
So you have to be absolutely, and unfortunately, that's what happens. Is a lot of guys won't make the decision, or it's too late before they make the decision because they're thinking about that in their head.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you're going to get around it. I don't know how you're going to solve that problem.
You know? And that's the thing. And as she said, like, trying to pose judgment on something that happened within a split second. 20 years later, it's crazy.
Yeah, personally, if it was me, I wouldn't try the guy that was there. Okay, yeah, he was the one that pulled the trigger, but the person that needs to be brought to justice is the person that knew more than him and put him in that situation.
Exactly. Because it's not fair. Because what's that going to achieve? Bringing someone to trial who's probably retired or whatever by now.
Could be in his mid-70s now at this stage. Like,
in their mid-70s, who made a decision when they were 18 on the streets of a city that they'd never been to before, with people around them who don't like him.
No, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. If the decision he made was wrong, and if it can be proven that it's wrong,
exactly, absolutely, and there was legitimate intent of like, I don't give a shit kind of thing. But if it was legitimate and that's the thing. There's always nuance, and that's the whole problem with these sort of like decade-old cases. That's the problem. It's because like it's very difficult to find the actual true answer to what it is. So it sort of seems like it's almost flogging a dead horse when bringing it to trial. But that's the problem with the whole thing, and it's that there's so much from both sides, or whatever side it may be.
No, there are certain things. I'm going to stop at this now because it's getting a bit politically again. There are certain things that happen in the north where people were killed that I do believe the individual soldiers that were there should face the music.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I know, I completely agree. But at the same time, that those certain incidents do not mean a brush should be painted across the entirety of it. That's the problem.
No. Yeah. But it's not those individuals. It's those individuals, the officers that put them there, that gave them the information, the officers that fed them the bad information. Everybody needs to face the music.
Yeah, exactly. And then you introduce the sort of restrictions and the parameters of what these guys were having to deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Politically, and the general what was happening that morning, because anything could change from morning to morning, for God's sake, with what you're dealing with in the area you've been in, say, for 2 months. Something could be different one day because someone's done something. Or like in the early 80s, like 1982, you've got the bloody hunger strike. No, 1981, you've got the hunger strike stuff going on. So that could change.
But it's like even getting onto the hunger strikers, yes, they wanted to be political prisoners, but that was fine. They were political prisoners. You know, they were political prisoners.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
the problem at that stage was you had internment, and an internment was it didn't matter who you were. If your next door neighbor said, "I think he's in the IRA," you got lifted and sent into jail and you didn't have to be tried. You had no. It was like, how long is he going to be in jail for? Fuck knows. Could be a week, could be a month, could be 2 years. You know.
Yeah. And that's the thing as well. It's like internment in itself was wrong. It was completely unjustified, really, in my personal view. It really, really was. And the problem is when that's all going on, and the guys on the ground have to deal with that situation of the higher tensions of things, and they're making decisions they've got to do to, you know, stop themselves getting, you know, unalived. And they're being held to account, yet the people who introduced something like internment aren't. That's the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's and as you said there, the people who are making the decisions should be held to account rather than the people who had to
enforce the decision.
Yeah. Exactly. It's
right. I better belt off anyway. Good chat.
Yeah, no. I appreciate you coming on, mate. You've been honestly really, really helpful for this. Really appreciate it. Absolutely.
And remember, Ulster says no.
Or do your knees. Cheers, John. Have a good one, mate.
Have a good one. Bye. Bye.
That was wicked. You know, thank you for John popping on. That was really, really good of him. Kind of like an American. Yeah. Yeah. Not all of them. Some of them were. A lot of them were really, really good. But there's certain ones which hold way more responsibility than the poor squaddy who has to make that split-second decision to pull the trigger or whatever it may be. And it's not fair on that. Like, but we shouldn't be dragging some poor bloke who's in his 70s or 80s into a courtroom to face a tribunal, which is heavily stacked against him through biases in the judicial system, when the majority of the public are completely on the side of the person who's being accused, just to satisfy something that happened 40, 50 years ago, when this guy was probably in his like late teens, who's probably on his first appointment, whatever. It's just like with anything, like what happened with the tribunals after the war in Iraq. It's such a grey area. Yes, some were legitimate claims that against that person. That's fine. And everything needs to be looked into, absolutely. But stuff going to court on the basis of very circumstantial evidence shouldn't be a system, really. It shouldn't be a thing that's really done. Circumstantial evidence should be circumstantial as it stands. Unless you have proper evidence, then generally the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, shouldn't be bringing it to trial, really. But that's my side. Yeah, no, and absolutely, Joe. It's confusing as it is. It really, really is. And Northern Ireland is very much it's in its own category of this. There's so much that happens throughout all those years of those several decades of this whole situation in regards to British troops being officially deployed to Northern Ireland. Yeah, it's just one of those things. Reason my friend moved to Germany post troubles, dude didn't want. I'm not surprised. Well, then again, even then, British troops and their families were targeted on the mainland of Europe. There were killings of British soldiers and their other halves, or one other of their family in Germany during the period of the Troubles. The IRA went international. There were bombings, there were shootings, there were assassinations at train stations, for God's sake, on the UK mainland, in England and in Scotland or whatever. There were bombings, there were all sorts of stuff. Like you had stuff in like Gibraltar. You had it's all a cluster. It really, really is, and it makes the whole situation very, very frustrating. So let's quickly go through this. There's actually a lot in it, which is actually really, really good. I forgot how much is in there. Again, great book if you can get it. Great book. about the English department. Say about the campaign in Europe, for example. The RA put on from the early 70s throughout the whole of the war. And then you have the parts which are post the ceasefire. Yeah, Fubar, absolute mate. Fucked up beyond all reason. I love that phrase. I really, really love Fubar. You have the shootings which happened right up and just post the ceasefire itself, and a couple of bombings after the ceasefire, which kind of put a sort of a shadow over the whole of the ceasefire, etc. And then also the Good Friday Agreement of chaps going round in the back of a car with a 50 cal, for example, taking out individuals, which was horrible. And then also the bombings in I'm trying to remember the name of the town now. One of the guys have actually been pulled into trial. Finally, really. So it's such a hellscape of a situation. We'll try and go on for another half an hour or so, and yeah, it's been really, really good actually. One of my first streams actually for a long while. Touch wood. That have actually been very, very good. Yeah, I think the reprisals were my friend. Yeah. It's a horrible time. Like Skilling, yeah. For example, my father, he served 20 years. He did 5 tours in Northern Ireland. His first when he was 18 in 1976. So it's like you think back for a lot of you guys are probably over 18. Think back when you were 18. What would it have been like for you to be going onto the streets of a country that is your own? Yes, you're in Northern Ireland. Yes, you're in technically another country, but you're still part of the same nation. You're on the streets of that nation, patrolling against and trying to deal with paramilitaries and other criminals who are out to kill you, really. And it's crazy. It's really, really bizarre. Like it looks like where you're from. People talk the same language as you do, or roughly sometimes sound like the same language you do, depending on what part of Ireland you were in at the time, Northern Ireland, I should say. But like for people who are from the UK, you'll probably remember something like Woolworths. Like you're patrolling, like outside Woolworths or outside W. Smith's or the post office, for God's sake, or a bank that you might even have an account with. Like it's so bizarre. It would be like, say, American troops having to patrol around Hawaii, like on right duties, etc., and patrol and for public order, and having to deal with the paramilitary in like Hawaii or Alaska or anywhere that's like completely Americanized and they spoke English or whatever. Or should I say, spoke the same language you do and look like you. It's one of those things. I kick doors with a sledgehammer and repurpose things from bad. Yeah. Tell me about it, Joe. Yeah, no, it's yeah, it's a crazy thing to do. It's like times have changed a lot. Like there's still guys who are serving with the British Army who served in Northern Ireland, obviously, because again, Operation Banner didn't end until 2007, which again people don't tend to realize. Like, yes, the Good Friday Agreement was in the late 90s, but Banner did not end in 2007 to secure the peace. And it would be hell in my sort of fear sophomore year. I never do. That was a senior. That went to exactly. Like I've got friends who went to Afghan, who went to Iraq, who were in their like late teens, early 20s, and like that's some of them have been sort of severely scarred by it and come out a bit fucked up from it. Some have, some haven't. But again, that was that. That's that. Not let alone you being on your own streets and having to deal with that. But I would never want to be in a riot situation where I'm having to hold a line against people who have a severe hatred against me or whoever I'm protecting. whenever it may be. It's a horrible. I would not want to be in that at all. And to the guys who did it, I have the utmost respect, like completely. It really is something else. Part of my job before I changed my life was going door to door first. Yeah, absolutely, mate. Absolutely, Joe. But yeah, no. So let's quickly cover through this book a bit because I keep opening and closing it and not really going into anything. So let's go. Chapter 5. So page 63. Page 63. Let's have a look, shall we? There we go. So defeat of the IRA insurgency 72-73. So obviously the IRA was not defeated in 72-73, but basically through operations that basically dampened the IRA's fighting potential for several years throughout the early to mid 70s until their resurgence in a main really much larger light in the late 80s. Because again, the IRA changed itself as well. So it was the IRA, then it was provisional IRA, then it was the new IRA. I'm surprised they didn't go and the best IRA yet. I can't believe it's not Beirut. Almost like it kept changing names like bloody butter. It was like, it was crazy. Yeah, there's great bits in like news articles in this book actually as well, from like the Belfast Telegraph, the Irish Times. Men and women should ponder how to virulent Nazi style disregard for life and knowledge. Yeah, it's crazy. It's also goes through actually who was in deployment at the time, which is really, really good actually. I really, really like this. So who was operating at this time? So this is 1971, 72, 73. So at Hollywood through the 39th Infantry Brigade, resident. So Prince of Wales Zone on its second tour, 1972. Welsh. This is a realignment tour. So these are like the short, like 3-month tours. 1972 Welsh Guards, Royal Regiment Fusiliers, Royal Anglians, King's Own, 40 Commando, Lifeguards, 19th Field Regiment of Artillery, Light Infantry, the Paras, Paras again, probably 2 Para and 1 Para separately, 42 Commando. That was Ardoin, realignments. So the Welsh Guards in Suffolk, Beachmont, Springfield Road, New Lodge, East Belfast, Musgrave Park, Springfield Road again, Lignell, or however you say it, Cregan. So this is Londonderry, Bogside, Ballykelly. That's Queens. Still 2 Queens. First Royal Scots, for example, New Wave IRA. Yeah, yeah, New Wave. It's crazy. Yeah, you got to get the emo IRA next as well. 2 Queens, 32nd, 33rd Independent Field Squadron. Coldstream Guards, these emergency tours. So Coldstream Guards, Royal Regiment Fusiliers, so it's 3 Royal Regiment Fusiliers, 2nd Light Infantry. 22nd, sorry, 26th Armored Engineer Squadron arrived on the 30th of July from West Germany, sorry. 50th Squadron RCT. Yeah, King's Own Borderers. King's Borderers, I'm guessing that is. Talk about like some of the deaths. They lost Sergeant William Broadley, shot in Strabane, 1975. Like there's stuff like that in here. It's a really, really good book, actually. Yeah, and it sort of shows all these different like deployments, etc. And I quite like that actually. And there's some good, like, for example, great photos. Like, as I said, like early Northern Ireland, bayonet fixed. Doesn't even have a flat vest on, just has full infantry equipment with a lightweight respirator bag on his front, probably with a lightweight respirator or an S6, depending, because it was all a mixed match. That's that. And then literally within 1 year, you've got riot gear with flak vests on and riot helmets. So it's such a changing point. Hi, Alice. Hope you're well. Hope the call out was quick. Well, it kind of was anyway. Well, roughly an hour anyway. So, yeah, things to that nature, like all these deployments and all this change. It really, really does put everything to perspective. Really. I've got a cup of tea now, just to let you know. Thank you to my other half for bringing that. It was really nice. Let's have a look. So again, like weaponry as well, we were talking about earlier in regards to what the IRA was using or what paramilitary was using. Here you go, Mark 15 mortar. So this is they're basically firing like the fuel, like the propane cans, basically, or Collins gas domestic cylinders. Yeah, so basically that. So they would put those either on like fixed positions, like in a back garden, or sound like several of them on like a back of like a flatbed lorry, fire it into a one of the patrol bases or whatever it may be, or one area, whatever it may be, to cause havoc. Because these things are very bad, devastating. But you're basically firing like a massive gas cylinder with a small charge on the bottom just to explode and like a ball of fire. And that like basically to target places like this. Like these are forward operation bases, like in sort of hilly parts around the general countryside around Northern Ireland. I don't know, but yeah, no, it's really, really, really quite good. I about that terribly. Absolutely. We'll go on for a little bit longer. Maybe not fully 2 hours because I'm sort of I've got some other stuff to sort of sort out tonight anyway. But no, I really, really appreciate you guys watching. We've gone down a little bit in viewers, but how it was before. But no, it's been really, really good, and really thank you so much for John for popping on. I really, really appreciate that. It's been quite a good, nice online stream. Inline stream. Just see, of course we're online. To keep it on topic, really. So that's been really, really good. I'll hope to maybe do one similar to this again on Operation Banner. Hope to have some different people on. I hope to have John on again because he's really good on that sort of thing. But I'll hope to have one or two different faces on, hopefully, maybe next time, if they're willing to pop on. I maybe hope to have my dad on maybe as well. Because I did an episode on a podcast with him over a year ago now. Actually about 2 years ago now. Almost. And that was really, really good. Yeah, no, absolutely, Alice. No, it's Operation Banner is very interesting, and it really should be taught in schools. Again, it's very tricky for that even to be done as well, I would say, because of all the nuance that goes with it and how delicate the situation is, because depending on where the school is, it could probably depend on what is being taught. But again, that's the thing. I think the broad outline of the general facts of the situation in regards to why things happened, and keeping opinion out of it as much as possible would be probably best. That's the thing. That's how really history should be taught, really, in regards to schools. When you get into university, maybe then you can get into sort of why things are done in a certain way, why you think it might be, and you can maybe pose an argument of why you think something might have been done. But then again, that's sort of that. I think in regards to teaching something like Northern Ireland in regards to a secondary school environment, later secondary school, so year 10, 11, in my view, and maybe college as well, outlining the actual facts within what was going on at the time in regards to what the issues were on one side and what the issues were on the other, posing both sides of the argument, and then people can make up their own minds. That would be probably the best thing to do, I think, really. And then going into brief bit in the politics and also talking in the broad terms of, say, Operation Banner, for example, what was done and why, and try and keep away from all the other nuanced stuff regarding all these people did this stuff, so this is that, and this. Well, that's beside the point. We know that stuff happened, and that can be discussed in its own separate thing. But in regards to it as a whole, we need to talk out the main straight line things that need to be done first before we get into that kind of thing. But yeah, that's that thing anyway. But yeah, I think it's something that needs to be taught more, because it's one thing. Oh, well, we learned about castles again. Exactly, that's all good. That's all well and good. But there's certain things that don't really get talked on or touched on really much in regards to GCSE history, let alone A-level history, that sometimes you don't even touch on to really until university education history. And even then, that's even more opinion driven and some sort of politically driven as well from one side or the other. Mainly one side, but I won't get into that. Which sort of defeats the point of having to have a general good conversation about, or good lesson or good lessons in regards to the actual meaning of what was going on in the first place before we get into what I think should have done or what I thought was wrong. We know, like, terrorism is wrong in general. It doesn't matter what it is. And as we put, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Yes. But in regards to civilian population being targeted by paramilitary groups, that is not good. That is not good whatsoever. Like, systematic killings of political opponents is not good, no matter who you're thinking for. If it's done by the British Army or done by the IRA or done by the UVF or whoever, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It's wrong, and it should be pointed out such. But equal hand should be posed across all of it, not just pushing for one side or the other. I have my own biases. I completely accept I have my own biases in regards to something like this or whatever it may be. But again, when I'm giving it as a general thing, I try to steer away from that because that's not helpful for the situation. If you ask within, say, private conversation, whatever, I will happily give that. But I won't put it on here because that doesn't help the situation. Because that will put me in one box and I will be the thing, and it doesn't help the situation. It's a very important part of Britain's history. And yeah, exactly. Like, but I think especially in the last 20, 30 years, in regards to Britain's education in general, it's turned on its head so much that it's gone from one extreme to another. And that's what happens. The pendulum doesn't swing slowly. Well, it does, but it swings, but it doesn't, like, come to an equal sitting. It always goes one way completely or the other. It doesn't come to a central ground where it actually wants to actually make conversation and actually pose a decent actual argument, and or not even saying necessarily argument, but just general putting forward the actual facts of a situation before it goes into, oh, but this is what I think. Like, that's the problem. Like, let's look at what was actually said, what was actually done before we get into why I think it was done, like, kind of thing. Yeah. Oh no, like, the UK needs education reforms, the US needs like the whole of the West needs to reform their education systems, like, majorly, because it's highly lacking, especially in the States, when, like, a vast majority of the children who are coming out of the education system in the United States can just about read or write. It's not good. It's really, really not good. And that's why some of them want to go to college and have to suffer the massive debts incurred through college, because they want to learn. And then the problem is, because with college, though, they then get pushed an agenda of whoever's teaching them within that system, and it's the whole thing. I won't go into that really, mainly because it's not going to be helpful for do this. But yeah, but no, I agree. Yeah. Sorry, my crazy mother is but yeah, but anyway, that's one thing anyway. But yeah, with the whole of the situation with regarding to, say, Operation Banner, it needs to be taught, really. Generally, the whole of, not the whole of it, but like Northern Ireland history or Irish history within the case of the 20th century does, I think, need to be taught on a GCSE level as well. Like, for example, from my GCSE history, we covered in the first part was castles okay, even though I covered castles multiple times in like primary school and early secondary, to then cover about Nazi Germany from 1918 to 1945, which again, absolutely perfect. But it just seemed like we didn't even finish doing that, and it was a bit of it was rushed and it wasn't done properly, and it wasn't covered to the extent that it should have been or it could have been done. Yeah, no, Joe. Yeah, that's pretty fair. Like things like this, things like, and I think again, too much opinion comes into when teaching history these days, and it has for the last 20 years. For example, the British Empire has taught us a whole different thing, and it's all pushed by politically motivated, divisive teachings within, say, higher education, which does not help the situation when actually teaching about a subject. How about we just outline what happened and all things, and you don't just push one side of things you're teaching. You don't just push all the bad things. Attempt to teach an equal footing on the subject without trying to push your own political biases within it. It's not helpful for teaching schools, for teaching anyone really, and allow people to make up their own minds and also do their own research as well. Push for more of that. Push for teach, give them a basis to go off, but also allow them to do their own research. Because if you just say this is what happened, while also filling the gaps in that you want to with your own political biases, whatever it may be, or your own moral biases, or however it may be, it's not going to help anything. Why did I learn about the horrors of Nazi Germany, but not exactly? Alice, you put it absolutely perfectly there. Yeah, exactly. Like, bear in mind the Soviet Union lasted for a lot longer than National Socialist Germany did, yet we don't hear about that really at all because of, again, a political and moral biases in that. Howdy, howdy. Oh. Hello? Hello? Okay. We'll see what happens there. Okay. Yeah, they don't teach kids anything relevant. It's it's crazy. There's a real lacking in general society these days within regards to the education system that really need to be picked up. They need to be taught a broad, more sense of history as it stands regarding to what actually happened, rather than what people's feelings on what happened are. Hello.
But we can only teach cute and fluffy.
I can't hear anything you're saying. Hello. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, dial up. Yeah. Would I be able to pop on quick? Yeah, you can do. Give me 2 seconds. Right, yeah, give me 2 seconds. I'm not even gonna speak about these exclusive anywhere. Yeah. Again, John. Yeah, it's a whole. Copy. Okay. I don't even know who. Was that Levi or who was that? I don't even know who that was. I could barely hear them. I agree, John. We can protect banks from people like me wanting to rob one, but not. Yeah, exactly. It's such a confused situation. It's really sad. So there we go. There you go. I've just sent you one, Alice. Exactly. With a lot of things, if there's no money to be made out of it, then generally people won't push for it. There's an equal footing and equal look at history. Is everyone wants equality in this day and age, but they don't want to give an equal view on, say, history, which I think is probably the best way to teach history, because it allows people to make up their own minds of what their view is on one subject. And it really does polarize things too much when you push one thing over another. Oh, as Anna said, all the horrors in Nazi Germany. Absolutely, there were. But also there were major horrors in the Soviet Union and Maoist China, for example. It's such a thing. And both of these regimes lasted a lot longer than, say, Nazi Germany. So it's like, howdy doody.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm good.
Whilst we talk about education, things like that,
Yeah.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
That so much of it is opinion based and not actually. I feel like there's a lot of history which would benefit young people because learn by mistakes, which just is not being taught.
Yeah. John, I don't know who it was who popped in earlier. Alice is Welsh, but I don't know who popped in earlier. I think it might have been Levi, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. I think it was, yeah. But yeah, I completely agree with everything you're saying, especially Northern, especially like what happened in Ireland as well, because if you want to learn about government, things like that, it's literally what happened on our doorstep. Hello, Levi.
Hello?
Hello.
Oh, there you are. Can you hear us okay?
Ship to shore. Levi, ship to shore. Oh, Jake, did I tell you, by the way?
What's that?
Basically, my neighbour, they brought me a present to help cheer me up. Would you like to see what they brought me?
Yeah, go on then.
A book about the Penley lifeboat disaster, because apparently it's interesting read.
Okay.
No, it's a book about, I was about to say that.
That's cool. New English history, the English arrived. Exactly, John. Yeah, like there are major things that we did which are horrible, but at the same time, there are a lot of things we did which were brilliant. Like it's again, there needs to be this non-polarized view on teaching history, and until we get to that, which I think is probably going to be a very much a unforeseeable future, really, at the minute, because there's no money in it, and there's nothing to gain apart from indoctrinating people into your own political career, if it be whatever side it may be. It's just one of those. Pol Pot was exactly like the horrors of communism, exactly. But like the thing is, even then, like when we teach about, say, National Socialism or fascism or whatever it may be, we don't even cover, say, the Italian fascism and how that developed and how that was done and why it came about and also how it's developed, really. I think until you get into sort of higher education, but then even then, and as I said earlier, when you get into higher education, then the more morally political or morally whatever it may be, views and biases come out into and seep into that teachings, and then it grays the whole area. Am I unpass or I'm an American? My ancestors told King George. Yeah. Absolutely, mate. But no. It's been really, really good. Are you now in a stable location?
Hello.
Hello?
I'm a little bit stable, but I'm in a location.
Are you going through a tunnel?
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me okay? Hello?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, just about.
Hello.
Just about. You sound like Stephen Hawking, but yeah.
Hello. How are you today?
Oh, is it Danny, is that you?
Hello. Yeah, possibly.
Oh, right. God. Oh. Where are you on the way to in your car?
What's so funny?
What's funny is because it's
On my way back from glorious work.
Come into the call when you get home because the connection's so poor. It sounds like you're going through water.
Hello, I'm really sorry, my phone died and I have to grab my charger. Hey, Levi, would you like me to,
It's Danny. It's my mate Danny.
would you like me to come out on the lifeboat? It sounds like you need it.
Yeah, it's Danny.
Oh, is it?
He's on his way home from work. I'm guessing he's using his data, so that's why it's so off.
Yeah, I'm using mine as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, I'm actually enjoying. I know very little about the subject. I've really enjoyed this stream.
Yeah, no, I'm glad it's sort of kept more on base than before.
Because I've not.
No. It's just generally I've been sort of very determined to keep it on in general. So, but no. I hope to cover it again in maybe in another live stream. Not the next one, but hopefully one or two down the line or whatever. Maybe I'll have some other people on. And I'll
Speaking
hopefully go
of
from there.
which, do you remember the last live you had?
Yeah.
Do you know I was just talking to a friend and it suddenly hit me. I was on a live with Jake Brown and Rifleman Moore, and I was just there going, "Holy crap! I've got a good life." Like, seriously,
that was really nice for Simon to jump on. Actually, that was really good of him.
That was. He is very, very. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I've idolized him for God knows how long, and it was just like,
yeah,
it sort of hit me a couple of days later, like, wow.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. No. He's a nice bloke. Because I was watching a lot of his videos and etc. for a long time, and then I eventually got to meet him. Oh God, how many years ago now? About 2018, maybe. I think it might have been 2018. And I've known him personally for about 5 or 6 years now. So
yeah, he's a very, very nice. He's the person who got me in the area.
He's very much not like. Well, he is a bit like what he is in person, but when he's in like a really good mood, he's very much different, which is great. So which is really, really good. Which I love about it.
I must admit, one thing I do love about this community is you do meet so many different people and you do learn so much.
Absolutely, like,
you know.
If I didn't do this, I probably would not have met, say, Danny, who currently we are speaking to from the other realm.
Yeah, by the way, Danny, lifeboat's on the way, mate. Just keep your head above water, lean back. Maybe try not to do a live stream.
Sorry, Jack. Don't leave me.
The door's big enough. The door's big enough. She can bloody move over.
It's a nice door. It's an IKEA door. It's sinking.
It sounds like he's talking to us through an acoustic guitar.
No, it's like I've put like the static on the telly. We're talking to a poltergeist.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Oh, speaking of which, I was in
Yeah.
a charity shop the other day going for
Yeah.
going a load of books, and
Yeah.
literally in the middle of easy reading section, I found a book on satanic rituals.
Oh, fun times.
Yeah, I know. I had to buy it. It's one of those things where it's like I need it.
You didn't have to buy it, you wanted to buy it.
Of all the books there, how was I gonna say no?
What was it that and not like gardening with Alan Titchmarsh, was it? Like...
Yeah, it seriously it was gardening, baking, satanic rituals, antique furniture.
how to do upholstery.
The pig.
Yeah.
Yeah. I swear anything was meant to make it to this live stream.
Oh, who's that? Sorry, I can't see the chat. I'm currently
So it
developing
was
film.
Joe putting like, I swear everything in my personal life is meant to make it to this live stream. Something I actually enjoy.
Oh, is Joe on there? Is Joe still in chat?
Joe Morgan, yeah. And
Yeah.
Kenny's,
Hi, Joe.
Kenny's just asked, are you using Klansman on the live stream, Danny?
Hold on, I'm going to get
No,
the
no, we
ritual
didn't
book out. It
ask
might
for
have
it.
an answer. But yeah,
I
anyway,
got it.
what else have you been up to?
Nothing much. Obviously, just working.
Larkspur requires a secretary to work.
How's your new job treating you?
Jesus Christ. No, I've just been working this weekend off because I get every weekend off now, so which is good.
that's
Yeah, just chilling now. So I've been trying to just do stuff today, and then I've got to I'll finish. I'll end the stream in a bit. We can stay on for a bit because I'm going to invite a couple of people on to do some general chat about something else. So you can stay on for that if you want.
Yeah, sure. Like I say, I'm just developing film, so at the very least it gives you someone to
that's
talk to
fine,
whilst
that's
I'm doing it.
Sorry, I'm a bit salty today. My mother and the other woman here at home are really pissing me the fuck off. Fair enough, Joe. I feel
Yeah,
for
you
you.
need a hug. I'll come give you a hug. Come on, bring it in. Ah, there you go, mate.
Oh, the deal.
I'll tell you what, I've been doing some urban wildlife photography,
Okay,
and
yeah.
you'd be surprised how many deer end up just strolling around the town after about 1 a.m.
Yeah, it's really bizarre sometimes. It's really bizarre. Like deer, foxes, anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Rightio.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for joining me on the live stream and joining my guests, etc. Thank you for John for joining us earlier. Really appreciate that. Yeah, no, it's been really good. And thank you to everyone in the chat. If you're still here, if you passed that thing. Yeah, no, it's been really good having you guys on. And
Have a lovely afternoon, everyone.
Absolutely. Well, have a lovely evening or have a lovely morning, wherever it may be. But yeah, no, really appreciate
Live life
it.
to your best. Always tip your waitress and never litter.
And world peace.
Yeah. No,
And
not that.
stay in-
Otherwise, we'd have nothing to talk about.
And stay in homeschool. I'm going to say that. Yeah, stay in homeschools. That's just generally what's better at the moment. Yeah.
Vote for Pedro.
What was that?
John, I love you too, John. Thank you so much for that.
Oh, hold on. Let me just check. I'm curious.
Time for Tutty Boy, yeah. Time.
Oh, you're welcome, Joe. Always willing to give someone a hug. I think you're still a twat. Yeah, I think that about myself too. Time for bed. Time for tatty bye bye. Yeah.
Yeah. Tatty bye, everyone. Tatty bye. Yeah. Yes, I am like Ken John's, probably Ken John's love child. Wouldn't be surprised. Rightio, right. Cheers, guys, everyone. Thank you. I'll see you again later. Bye.
Love you all. Bye.
Aye.